So we are coming at the end of the day and at the end of the presentations. So I think it's time for a conclusion. And my first, unprepared conclusion is, if you see all this and you start from a blank sheet 15 years ago, this is probably the maximum that you can develop in 15 years. But I mean, that's my personal idea about it. We reconfirm our ambition to keep DWG users on track for the next life of DWG. I hope that you have seen and felt that DWG is alive and kicking. I mean, and it will be more and more in the next couple of years, for sure. We are very ambitious, and we have still a ton of plans to improve, to make new things. So we are absolutely sure that we can fulfill that. We will not forget the 2D part of that, but as said, we're going to make it more intelligent and more effective. And what I said about return on investment, in many different definitions today, even on the panel as well, when you're talking about more efficiency, more simplicity, you're talking about more return on investment. That's really what we are absolutely sure we can deliver and we will deliver. I first also want to give an attention to all of our people, all the 140 Bricsys guys that have, I think, done a tremendous job to make happen this for the last 12 months again, and to prepare all these, I think, wonderful presentations, all live. So if you don't mind, I'm going to applaud them. But somebody before me, way more famous than I am, always ended these presentations with, there's just one more thing. And, well, we have just one more thing. I'm really, really happy to announce a new product that we're going to launch. Our point is that we have to address the need of starting simple. I heard Michael Nordval saying that in the architecture, it's really about, first of all, it's about the architecture. And what you need is really simple tools, easy to use, to set up that conceptual design. I mean, play with it. It must be fun to do. I mean, I said it this morning already. If you have to be a specialist on the software, I mean, that's wrong. I mean, the software should be that easy that you can stay an architect or an engineer. I mean, and we think, we have that initial product to fulfill that wish, that requirement. And we call it Shape. BricsCAD Shape, you can call it Shape, whatever. It is about the GUI where nothing is missing, but as important, nothing too much as well. It's really made modeling simple, intuitive, from the point of view of managing your layers. I mean, you can read all these things. That is what it's all about. Make it easy, make it very, very intuitive, in a user-friendly interface. The process of creation and presentation is a 3D experience that becomes real fun and powerful. We're going to add, in the next coming months and probably years as well, more and more presentation tools to that product. We're going to make it richer for presentations, but I think it's already a very good start. And above all, it's by far the most easy modeler in the industry, absolutely sure. So it's 100% DWG. So it's nothing. It's 100% fitting in our philosophy. And the most thing probably for the market is that it's free of charge, and it doesn't require any training. So we're going to spread that massively in the industry. And all models that you make with Shape, you just open it with the full BricsCAD BIM and you BIM. So I think we are bringing BIM to millions of AEC users in the DWG space. So that's the real start for them. They don't have to pay for it. They play with it. I'm almost sure that they're going to like it. And then we talk and see if they move on. It will be available, I hope, end of 2017. But to be sure, absolutely sure, we have written down early 2018. But we can't wait to show it to you. So guys, show it.
Thanks, Eric. All right, we've been talking about future technologies, so as Eric mentioned, this is the near-term future of modeling. It's a very simplified interface and experience so that you have the tools, the features, everything at your fingertips so that you can explore your design ideas creatively. Now, I know this might come across that we're becoming obsessed with yoga, but we're going to take the yoga studio that we showed earlier in the BIM project, and we're going to build it from scratch using Shape. So, well, one thing I'd say, one challenge that I would pose, as we're going through this, see how many times Jacob has to use things other than the toolbar across the top, the browser that'll come on the right side, the quad, and just the overall workspace. So let's get started. We'll start by creating just a box for the footprint of the yoga studio. And I'd do yoga moves if I could, but it wouldn't be pretty. So we can take this geometry and we can start to manipulate it and work with it. So you saw the manipulator earlier. So we could take that, we could change the slope of that surface, say 10 degrees initially. And if you remember, the whole concept was about folded screens. So we'll grab the surface on the back side, on the rear side of this building, we'll add a slope to that, and then we'll also do the same thing on the roof of it. So within 3 moves, we're starting to shape the form. But as we look at the front, it's not steep enough. I mean, it's too steep, so we want to add some more slope to that. So we can just grab it again. Again, the manipulator's right there, and we can reset the angle to what we want. All right, now we can grab that side boundary, and we can offset it to create a default depth for the roof, the walls, and the floor. And so then using that boundary, we can push it through to hollow things out and create a shape there. And then what we can do to create the walls and the roof, we can use slice that we access from the quad. We can do that on the undersurface of the roof, and we can also do that on the top surface of the floor. And so then we've got the walls, the roof, and the floor. And now, the whole tower design was about natural ventilation, but this is a little bit too much. So we'll look at adding some sidewalls here really quickly. So we can grab the boundary of that, extrude it towards us, and create the wall. And then we can just grab a surface of that wall, use BIM drag, and carry it across to the other side. So pretty quickly, we're starting to build things up, explore our design ideas. We can then start to look at creating an opening for that entry into the yoga studio. So we could create just a shape rectangle here. And then we can grab that, and we can push it through not only the wall, but we can push it through the floor and the sloped wall as well to create that void. And then we can zoom in a bit, and we can draw some polysolids to create an enclosure. And we'll quickly place those, and we can select the undersurface to set the height. Now, we didn't draw it all the way to the edge of the sloped wall because we can just highlight the surface, access, connect to nearest, and then it'll connect it to that sloped wall. Then we can grab the boundary that's created by the floor, and we can use that to drag it out to create the landing for the entry area. So then we can hide the roof, and we can start to create a view looking inside. Now let's create the second floor. And we can do that by, we'll use connect to shift the connection of the walls so we can get the surface that we want. I'll highlight that top surface, extrude it up to create the depth for a floor. And then we'll use push-pull to pull it out. And then we'll use connect to nearest. That'll connect it to that sloped wall in the back. We can use connect to nearest on the other side to connect to the side, and again, to the front. So pretty quickly, we have this floor that's connected to these sloped walls. Now we can unhide that, and we can hide the surface of this end wall. And it creates a boundary on the other end. So we can use that to grab that, use BIM drag, and then pull it to create an interior wall. So as you start to use Shape more, you'll realize that you can use boundaries in lots and lots of interesting ways. So now we can get that boundary surface on the front wall and push it through to create a void opening for a rough space. And again, we're just trying to get some design ideas down. And now we can start to create the exo structure that's a key part of this yoga studio. So we can select that boundary, select an offset, start to create that. Then we can take that polyline and we can push it out to create a surface. That's the depth of the frame, the structural frame. And then we can highlight that overall surface, use thicken, and we can create the overall 3D structure element. And then we can make a copy of that because this is actually a prefab assembly unit, and so we have two frames that are in close proximity that are connected to each other. And now we can isolate these two structural frames, and we can start to create the secondary structure members that are spanning between those frames. So we can get the surface to set the UCS that we want, and then we can draw a profile for a beam that we can push through and create an initial structural member. Then we can grab that surface, use BIM drag, and start to make a copy of it, and then we can make a number of copies of it. Now, it may seem at the end of the day that Jacob's going a bit over the top here, but part of the design intent is that we're able to fold these members down to that structural frame. So again, we can use our friend the manipulator and set the angle for that and turn them down to the face of the structural member. And we can do a similar approach on the back. We can create copies of those, bring them to the edge of that truss or that frame, and then we can grab those. And again, using the manipulator, we can turn them down. And what we can do is we can create an intermediate member here by just grabbing that boundary that's created from between, you have the two beams and you have the boundary, so we could grab that, and then we can create a copy, and we can carry that forward across. And so we can actually have a structural member reaching out to that one that was just floating out in space. And so now we've got the main structural members in that bay, in our structural module. So then we can grab that whole set, we can create a copy of it, and then repeat copy to go across the whole width of the yoga studio. Now we need to finish off the two frames at the end, so we can just make a copy of those. And there we've got the initial rough form and the structure in place, but we've got a few things to clean up. So we can grab the surface of that beam, do a select all from the quad, and then move those using BIM drag to create an offset over that last frame. And we can quickly do the same thing on the other side. Are we having fun yet? I'll take that as a yes. All right, and so now what we can do, since we've got the overall structure in place, we're going to look at doing the glass canopy, and we're going to create that from just a polyline. So we can start at the lower, on the front facade, at the lower side, the outer face of that beam, we can carry that up, get to where we can wrap to the roof, down the back side, and we can find that intermediate point between there, and then we can reach down to the back side, the lowest member. And so now we have a polyline, which then, similar to what we did before, we can create a surface from that and carry it all the way across. And then we can thicken that to create the glass canopy. So we've got the form in place now. Now let's step inside. We created a rough space with just creating an interior wall and pushing that opening out. What we'll do is we'll hide a couple members. Now, one of the other key components in Sketch is this components browser, where you have different categories of components that you can start to place. So maybe we're considering this initial rough layout of a space to be a lounge for the people at the yoga studio, where they can hang out before and after classes, to where they can relax. So Jacob's setting the mood by introducing some couches, feeling comfy already. And maybe we introduce a table into that. And this is a way to also check the size of the space that you're working with to see if it makes sense, if you need to make adjustments. Now, maybe those people, when they finish the yoga class, they want to play a baby grand piano, or they want to have somebody else play the baby grand piano so they can keep that Zen state of mind. But you have access to a lot of components right off the bat when Shape becomes available, but that content will only continue to grow. Another thing that you can do is access other different categories, so you have access to doors and windows. And so if we just wanted to look at creating some openings to connect to the adjoining spaces, we could. And again, you place it in the same way. So what we could start to do now is lay out the site. And we could start by just defining a block for the overall site area. So Jacob was just selecting the bottom surface of that and then using that to be able to draw. And then we could add one for the street. Part of the yoga studio design idea that we're trying to pitch is that it's partly cantilevered over a water feature. So we could create an opening for that water feature, use that boundary, and then push it down to create the void. And then if we wanted to, there we go. And if we wanted to, we can ultimately just those voids are hard. There we go. And so what we can then do is, again, keeping with the theme of being able to select boundaries, we can select the boundary, do an offset. If we want to set the depth for the water feature walls, we can, and then we can select in between those two boundaries and create another extrusion that we can go up to do the water feature walls, and then we can extrude that bottom to create the water feature element itself. Now, if we wanted to start to add some character to this, we can select other types of icons if we're starting to pitch the idea and try and sell the idea. Since we're in an urban setting, we can incorporate a bus, and we're probably going to need some lighting for the design at night. And then where there are buses, there are typically bus shelters. So we can quickly select and include that. And keeping with the active lifestyle idea of the yoga studio, we could include a bicycle. But these things need some interesting characters. So we can select a category of people, and we can maybe introduce a group of people that are talking about how fabulous that yoga class was. Or if you want to sell a design idea, it's not a bad thing to have a famous architect. So if we introduce Philip Johnson into this model, then he could help sell the idea. But now, Philip and I have one thing in common. We both don't have a lot of hair. So it would probably be useful to have some vegetation available so we could grab some trees and incorporate those into the model. So pretty quickly, we can build up the story around our design idea. Now, as we scan back to this and look at it, it's looking a bit monotone right now. So another option that we have is to add materials to this. So we could put grass on the site. We could do concrete on the roadway and maybe on the walls of the water feature if we wanted to. We could add the water element, material to create the water element. Then we could select some materials to put on, or we could create the glass canopy, putting glass material on the canopy, and then we could select multiple wall surfaces, exterior wall surfaces, the facades, and put a material on that just to create an idea. Obviously, we haven't added the windows and other things to this, but just quickly putting the idea together. And then maybe we could select the frames, and we could add a material to that. And we could add redwood to as a material to the landing, and Jacob's just getting creative now. But the idea is that we could keep going. We could keep adding to this, enriching the design idea, starting to tell the story. And as Eric mentioned, once we finish this, and we can end up bringing it into BricsCAD BIM, and you have access to all the features that you saw earlier and all the development efforts that are going into that. So, BricsCAD Shape. Start simple, model freely, add relevant info quickly, capture and share your design vision. Thank you.